some other gaps that you might have. Okay, so I can arrange that.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
Take
looking
care.
forward to it.
Just bought my dress for the ball. I'm very excited.
You just what?
I just bought my dress for the ball.
Oh, good.
If it fits.
Me too. I
Looking forward to it. It's a
I
good
have
night.
14 suits, and only 4 of them
Barely.
Well, it's time to get in line with Dee Dee and her crazy shakes.
I have all that take shake for life food at home, except when there's a meeting going on, and I go to Sedona Tap House before the meeting.
Right.
And
They put a lot of
there we
salt.
go.
Their food is very salty, which is not very good.
Oh, that's a great, I think that's a great place.
Isn't it wonderful?
Oh,
You ever go there on a Monday
Sedona
night?
Tap House, where the
Waypoint.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yep.
I've been
in
there.
the courtyard there.
You ever go there on a Monday night where they have the charity steak?
Oh, no, but I've seen that advertised.
They have a charity steak that normally sells for $18.
You can get it for
On Monday night, you get it for $8.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Buried my agenda under everything. All right, and let's move right into our work session.
Okay, all right, so great to see a full complement of board members here tonight. Welcome, Mr. Holston. And great to have you all here for this important meeting. This is our annual budget workshop. It is the time, for the benefit of the new board members, it's the time when the superintendent recommends a budget to the board. Through your deliberations, you will make a budget request to the city, and through the mayor and council, and then ultimately the Board of Estimate and Taxation, the BET, we will get an amount of contribution from the city. It's at that point, generally in March or so, that our schools will complete their budgets. As you know, we have a student-based budget, so most of our funds go to the principal and SGC of each school on a per-student basis. They determine an allocation. I think their work is generally done in April, and then we combine the two. We generally go through a reconciliation process in late spring. If the city's allocation does not match your request, we will have to make adjustments. And then by statute, the board must approve a budget in June, by the end of June. So that's what the schedule is, and this is the very beginning of that schedule. Last, in beginning of the month, for that meeting that was canceled, I was scheduled to give a report on justice and equity in education funding. And this generally precedes the budget because it looks at our spending versus that of neighboring districts or comparable districts in Fairfield County. Since we were unable to do that because of the cancellation, I'll be doing that first, and that will lead us into a presentation of the budget recommendation. Yes, ma'am.
If I can just interject just for one moment, before you start the work session, I just wanted to share some very sad and tragic news. Krista Bray, who was one of our teaching assistants, who worked for the district for over 22 years. She worked at Kendall and Columbus Magnet School. Unfortunately, she did recently pass away. Our heart goes out to her family and friends during this very sad and tragic time. So I'd like to just have a moment of silence for Krista Bray. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In our society, talent and intellect distributes itself equally, but opportunity does not. Ensuring opportunity through equity is the job of the Board of Education and other leaders of our city who serve as mayor, members of the City Council, and Board of Estimate and Taxation. As you can see from the state verified data on the charts in front of you, the percentage of high-need students enrolled in Norwalk schools grew in 1819 to a historic 66% of enrollment, and has grown further in 1920. Currently, virtually 7 out of 10 students attending our schools are from low-income families, English language learners, or have special learning needs. Many are in 2 or 3 high needs categories and require additional support to receive an adequate education. In virtually all cases, reaching a level of achievement at or above average educational attainment in Connecticut, which is our benchmark, for a diverse student body requires a robust, broad-based, differentiated school program of instruction requiring a higher level of expenditure. The percentage of high-need students attending Norwalk schools is now greater when compared to Stanford, 66% versus 64%, and is expected to widen further in the next year. Despite spending less than $1,200 per student annually than Stanford, for the past 3 years, our schools have managed to improve, eking out a level of student performance slightly higher than Stanford's that has enabled Norwalk to become the highest performing city in the state as measured by Connecticut's Next Generation Accountability Plan, which you can see on the chart to your right. With greater support from the city, we have managed to be more efficient, working harder and smarter, leveraging the public's investment. This is a credit to our dedicated teaching and support staff at all levels, school leadership, the leadership of our district, and the governance of the Board of Education, guided by its strategic operating plan. However, we need to recognize that the continuing increase in high-need students, coupled with inequity in resources, creates an environment where the current relative achievement level of Norwalk students is not sustainable. The greater and growing numbers of high-need students in Norwalk suggests that our schools need resources at a higher level than Stanford. Tonight, I am only asking that Norwalk students receive the same. The budget I'm recommending for the 2021 school year represents an equity increase of $14,319,745, or a 7% increase, necessary to match the 2018-19 per pupil expenditure of Stanford, our closest comparison district and competitor. It should be noted that the current Board of Education and city leadership do not own the opportunity gap facing Norwalk students. Under Mayor Rilling's leadership during the past 3 years, our budget increases have exceeded the state average, and the city has committed significantly to building new schools and renovating those in disrepair. This funding gap our students are still experiencing is historic in nature. Over at least the past 15 to 20 years, while other communities invested in their schools, Norwalk's municipal government was concerned with building its unallocated fund balance. also known as the Rainy Day Fund, now the largest of any municipality in Connecticut. Compounded growth is touch to catch. However, based on the economic growth of the city, the progress of our schools, and the city's commitment of the past several years, we are finally at a point where justice and equity in education, educational funding, is within reach. I'm going to put another slide up here. There is another known inequity within our own school system that must be addressed. That is the crisis at Kendall Elementary School. For several generations of students, Kendall has been Norwalk's lowest performing school. 84% of Kendall students are in the high needs category. Virtually 4 out of 10 students are English language learners. All are eligible for free lunch. Kendall has become what Pedro Noguera has labeled the normalization of failure. The same program, the same time and instruction, same staff, same services, or lack thereof, and achievement has been the lowest in our city. This has existed at Kendall every year. It has become normal, and we have to do something about it. This year, we must challenge the normalization of failure by the complete redesign of Kendall School, of its program to include a year-round schedule. The cost of this is a little less than what is currently being spent per pupil annually at our highest performing school, the Center for Global Studies, a school with only 34% high needs students, the lowest number of high needs students in the city. To close the gap of over $3,000 per student, I'm recommending the $1,000 per student intra-district magnet supplement for Kendall students in the 2020-21 to enable implementation of the year-round schedule. While we feel confident that the funding necessary to implement all aspects of the redesign, including programs like Singapore Math, Kodai Music, Core Knowledge Reading, an additional hour per day of enrichment and wraparound services, will be closed initially by donor partners and several Fairfield County foundations. The allocation for Kendall included in Budget Goal 4 is the district's skin in the game of this important undertaking and required for others to contribute. Like John Winthrop's City Upon a Hill, Norwalk has become a beacon to those who wish to earn a better life for themselves and their families. It is a great place to raise a family. Our schools serve as the engine for achieving the American dream of going to college for countless children and their families, without regard to race, ethnicity, or economic status. Our students have demonstrated that given the same opportunities, they will do as well, if not better, than their homogeneous, economically segregated neighbors. Talent and intellect are distributed equally in every population. Opportunity is not. That is our job and that of every Norwalker concerned with justice and equity for our students and the future of the city. I trust that working together, we will ensure Norwalk students are valued equally to other students in other area school districts, and their opportunity gap can be closed once and for all. I have made detailed budget comments in my conveyance letter to you in the budget, which is on the first 3 pages of the budget document. But at this point, I'm going to ask Tom and Kristen, Tom Hamilton, our Director of Finance, and Kristen Karsmitz, our Budget Director, to walk you through the a general overview of the budget recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adamowski. Happy to be before the board again at budget season. It's always an interesting time, and you know, we get excited in the finance department about numbers, and so this for us is really obviously a very important time of year. Just see if I can. Okay, I think we're now into our presentation here. So I'm going to turn this over to Kristen in a moment to actually walk through most of the presentation. I do have a few opening comments that I want to make. First, I want to thank Kristen Karschmidt and Nina Laria of my staff, who worked countless hours to develop the budget, along with all of my colleagues throughout the district, both here at central office and in all of our schools, who play such an important role in developing the budget. Do want to make sure you're aware of the fact that the budget book has now been put on the city's website, so it is available to the public and available to other members of other boards and commissions who may be interested in it. There is one correction, one missing page, which I believe you were provided the additional page as a supplemental handout tonight. Page 85 needs to be inserted at page 85. You'll notice in the book, or you may notice in the book, that the curriculum department, we had two of the same pages, and we're missing the first page of the curriculum office. So that correction has been provided to you, and obviously the book up on the website now has the correct version. As the superintendent indicated, the budget really is a two-stage process. This is the first stage of the process where the board makes its decision about the total amount of funding that the board will be requesting of the city. The development of the student-based budget starts really in February. We start working with the principals and the school governance councils as they then decide how to allocate their per-student allocations in the student-based budgets as the city goes through its approval process of the overall budget as well. So the first slide up here, just to talk briefly about this. This is really a summary of the recommended budget by object, major object code, salaries, employee benefits, professional and technical services, property services, other services, supplies and materials, equipment, and other objects. You'll notice, of course, a couple of things. One, the recommended budget, the superintendent's requested budget is $216.5 million. Note that that is about $3 million less than the amount that had actually been requested from our various central office departments. So there were, in fact, reductions that were made from the budget request that we received to the budget that is being recommended to you tonight. The budget in total represents an increase of $14.3 million, or just over 7%. You'll notice that the majority of the expense, or the majority of the increase, is related to salaries and employee benefits. Obviously, we're a very people-intensive organization. Most of our cost is tied up in teachers and other employees who are working with students, as well as the employee benefits that those employees are entitled to under their collective bargaining agreements. So you do notice that a significant portion, the majority of the increase certainly in the recommended budget is in the salary area and the employee benefit area. So this incorporates the settled contracts with the NFT and with our other collective bargaining agreements. It also incorporates what is really now a significant enrollment growth that the district is experiencing, and that translates into the need to provide additional staff and additional teachers to address that enrollment growth. It also addresses the enrollment growth in the ELL population, which the board is well familiar with, which the district went back to the city, and the city thankfully did approve a special appropriation earlier this year to address the ELL enrollment growth. So this recommended budget does incorporate the program expansions in ELL that have been reviewed with the board. And finally, the budget incorporates the budget goals that Kristen will be walking through momentarily that are part of the district's strategic operating plan. So those are really the drivers of the budget for next year. And the increases really that we're looking at are to address all of those issues: enrollment growth, ELL growth, and the budget goals of the board. Kristen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good evening, Happy New Year. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present these budget goals and keep Norwalk Public Schools moving forward with good momentum. So does everyone have this sheet at where they are? It's like a long budget goal sheet, and it probably makes it easier to follow along. Just gives it in a summarized format so you could take notes and follow along with that. So the first slide here is just a summary of all the budget goals, and they're in order of magnitude. Really, this makes up over 94% of our $14 million ask. This totals $13.5 million. So we'll get right into the budget goals. Budget goal number 1 is the new collective bargaining increases, and this is the salaries and benefits related to or relative to new collective bargaining agreements. As you can see, the first one is the NFT, and that's worth $2.3 million. That is 2.53%, which is general wage increases and steps. We have NFEP, 2.55% or $279,000. NASA is 202, and down the list, nurses 36,000, ESG 47, technicians 14,000, custodians 97,000. And the bulk of it has to do with benefits. The net insurance increase that's projected for the 2021 school year. So budget goal number 2 is the enrollment growth increase. The 406,000 projected enrollment increase of students is the 2021 projected enrollment over the 1920 approved budget enrollment. And what we're using here is $8,193, which is the 1920 direct SBB or per pupil. That we believe is going to go up once we get through phase 2 of the budget. So right now we're estimating 3.3 million, but it could potentially be higher. Budget goal number 3, you've heard about this in a recent workshop in November. This relates to the plan development by the curriculum department that they had recently discussed. It's to implement and expand the ELL program as they had discussed. The first line here, as you can see, is $545,000. That's just the annualized impact of the $1 million special appropriation that was recently given. So by adding those positions in this year, we have to account for a full year cycle in 2021. I'm not going to go through every line item of the new salaries and benefits listed below because Helene and Brenda Myers had recently spoken about that, but that totals $885,000, and that helps support our programming. You do see a line item under those new positions for $250,000. That's bilingual support for special education Ls, and that would consist of a bilingual psychologist, speech pathologist, and special education bilingual teacher. Under that, we have $100,000 for the TESOL certification course, and that addresses the statewide shortage of teachers in this area, and that would potentially cover training for 22 teachers in Norwalk. We also have here $26,000 for translation, and then core supplies of $50,000. This is really to support the increase of the ELL population and give them the required specialized instruction that they need. Just note that the influx that we had gotten in the district this year is unusual. We don't expect that to happen again, but if it does, this budget ask only addresses the need up till June 21. So if something happens out of the ordinary during the year, it may require additional funding. And I believe you've all seen this chart before. I mean, it just illustrates the large increase in the ELL population. This was as of November 2019, we were at 2,119 ELL students, and I believe since then, it's gone up even more. So budget goal number 4 has to do with choice programs, and this budget goal is really proof that the district is supporting diversified programming, choice programs for our students. As Tom had mentioned for the first time, and Dr. Adamowski, the Kendall Above the Bar is here receiving the supplement for the first time. So that's new. That's worth $478,000 based on the projected enrollment. And we're still holding the $1,000 per student for this choice program allocation. Starting from the top to the bottom, we have Silvermine in the incremental funds of $93,000 here have been added for grade 4. Last year, we had grades K through 3. Jefferson no longer has status as a magnet program. Columbus was just an incremental $20,000 for a change in projected enrollment, and Tracy Character Education is now being added with grades 4 and 5 for a total of $190,000 incremental. There's a few other changes for the IB career-related program at Brian McMahon. This is a new portion of IB that was added, and that's 45 students or $45,000. And then Montessori Early Years is also new to the choice program allocation, $36,000. So budget goal number 5 has to do with the new general student transportation contract. This is consistent with the city's efforts towards a cleaner environment. This budget goal addresses and calls for transitioning to clean propane-fueled buses and smart buses. That particular portion of this budget goal is $125,000. We also have on here the healthier high school start time, which is worth $457,000, which you've all heard about numerous times. And then finally, the Jefferson Ponus relocation impact, where Jefferson students relocating will now need busing because they will no longer be in that neighborhood. That's $265,000.
Kristen, if I could just interject, I just wanted to thank Mr. Palmer for the smart bus concept and idea. We've had a little chance to explore that. This essentially is equipping school buses with Wi-Fi so that students can do their homework while on the bus. This will be particularly helpful to our high school students, as well as our South Norwalk students who spend the longer periods of time on the bus. So we'd like to accomplish this all in one swoop. This is the time to do it relative to the bidding of our contract.
Thank you for looking into it.
Great. So budget goal number 6 relates to the counseling and social and emotional learning, or SEL. As we've heard in recent board workshops in detail, SEL is how children and adults learn to understand and manage emotions, set goals, and establish positive relationships when promoted within educations truly achieves proven results. So that's why we feel this is very important. It also ties into the implementation of phase 2 of the recommendations of the Counseling Services Study Committee. And within this budget goal, there's 2 columns. Most of it does have a local impact, but some of it is paid through PSD grant as well. There is a position for the Director of Counseling, so the salary and benefit estimated cost is $200,000. We have 2 paraprofessionals, which are college and career counseling center positions, worth $140,000. Ruler program costs, this $7,500 is put in there in order to maintain 5 schools under the Ruler program. And then Rethink Social and Emotional Learning subscription and PD, $40,000. And then, of course, we have the Restorative Practice PD for $15,000, which is paid out of the PSD grant. So this is just, I'm not going to go through all the bullet points here, but this is basically the Director of School Counseling job description. It's a K through 12 position, which is used to implement the counseling redesign program, providing direct supervision of the district's counseling program. This position will directly supervise and evaluate all certified staff, all certified school counselor staff at all levels. They'll coordinate SEL goals based on recommendations, provide PD, and make sure that counselors are providing 80% of their time in direct student services. The second job description bullet points relate to high school, career, and college counseling center coordinators. There'll be 2 paraprofessional level coordinators that will coordinate activities related to career. They'll coordinate college activities for college access, coordinate college activities for college affordability, and then activities for college admission. So they will help support the Director of Counseling and the entire initiative. Budget goal number 7 relates to the Carver Center partnership worth $337,000. It's an estimate in the 2021 budget based on the best of our knowledge at this point in time, but I'm going to have Ralph come up.
So on this one, we had a question from Ms. Meyer Mitchell, and we'd like to provide that background now, if we could.
Yeah, so, good evening, Board Chair. What I've provided for you, are a number of bullet points within the presentation itself talking about the benefit of our work with Carver, but I think it would be important to understand the scope of the work that we do with Carver. So in your presentation, there's a description of all the different programs, as well as a budget breakdown for each one of our school sites and locations of funding, as well as what our funding allocation is going into this. If a number of you that were on the board a number of years ago remember, when we started talking about summer learning, I had done a presentation talking about summer slide and looking at examples nationally. And one of the things we talked about was the idea of shared accountability and a portfolio method of actually funding programs for extending schools, which would include municipalities, it would include the idea of getting funders and industry all to work together for this. And Rochester City Schools was the example that we were given for that, where they were funding about 20% of they actually developed a per pupil allocation that went into their operating budget that would then be added for summer learning. And we wanted to move in that direction over a period of years. The goal with Carver is to develop a pilot so we can develop a baseline and say, what really would that per pupil allocation look like? So this year would be the idea of developing that type of baseline, figure out what that cost would be, and then build on.
So just to add to that a little bit of background, there was a time when we had a variety of after-school care providers. There were 5 or 6, I think, initially. It's very hard to make money on after-school programs or even sustain it because there's a parent contribution, and quite often the parents don't pay. There's no way to enforce getting the money and so on. So they have all dropped by the wayside, with the exception of Carver, which is donor-supported. We had been running a complement to that for younger children called After the Bell. We are not able to do that based upon our labor contracts anymore because there's an effort underway to try to count that. If you were a para, like a part-time para, and you were doing that, to count that and say, you were full-time now, eligible for benefits and so on. So we're really prohibited from doing that. And so we have to rely on a partnership, and we have to have a third party actually employing the folks on an hourly basis who work in the program. So this is our contribution, our skin in the game. It is comparable to what we were spending in deficit on After the Bell, because we were also in a situation where parents were having difficulty paying and we couldn't collect it. So it is only possible to do this. I guess my point is it's only possible to do this when you have a partner that is donor supported. Because it's almost impossible to get this to pay for itself. We looked at this intensely in response to questions and concerns that we had from Ms. Meyer Mitchell during the discussion of the change of the start times. Around being able to guarantee that we could have before or after school program, whatever we needed. So we had to develop a broader capacity than either we had or Carver had, and this partnership enables us to do that.
Yeah, and as Dr. Adamowski mentioned, the baseline was built off of the gap that we had had in the prior year to be able to service the same students. One of the things when Novelette and I presented this to the Carver board that we had mentioned as well is that now that we've actually increased the program to this scale, this is thousands of students that Carver services on a regular basis. Novelette will be able to actually, and we will be able to, with her, be able to look at more national funding structures now in comparison to just local donors. So this actually ups the game for us. So over the next few years, we are looking at how do we develop a way of actually looking at different funding streams, which were not available to us in the past because we didn't have such an encompassing program.
Thank you so much for this useful information and for taking responsive action to the child care needs of our community. I am very enthusiastic about the idea of a per pupil expenditure for after programming, before and after programming. I'm curious, do we know that this will serve the needs that will be generated by the time change? Have we surveyed or projected that this will do the job?
So, as you know, the issue of childcare is determined by our SGCs. It's one of their 13 duties and responsibilities. They are actually going to be addressing that in the next stage of the budget process. So we'll have a more definitive view of what those needs are. As clearly as we can see it this time, however, we're going to have the flexibility, which we've lacked before, of doing it before school, after school, and dealing with as many numbers as the need requires.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So budget goal number 8 is American Sign Language, or ASL. This budget goal is for one ASL teacher, salary and benefits of $115,000, as well as ASL resources of $50,000 for a total ask of $165,000. This was a recommendation from our World Language Task Force, and American Sign Language will provide more choices for students to fulfill Norwalk's World Language 3 credit requirement, as well as give students the opportunity to take one additional year of ASL to supplement world language credits. This 1-year assignment under the district will then move to the SBBs, or the phase 2 of the budget process.
Those of you who had served on the board last year remember that when you approved the 26 credit requirement, we said we would have to come back to you on the language issue because we are now requiring 3 years of language as opposed to 2, consistent with our flagship university, the University of Connecticut's requirements. And so we have, prior to the new program of study, we had about a third of students who took no language, right? And then we had the rest that most of them took 2, a few took 3. So we are going to be in need of new languages that appeal to different learning styles. And so everyone cannot be in a Romance language anymore. You may find in a subsequent year, things like German or Russian being recommended until we get to the threshold where we can meet all student needs. But this would be a great step forward, particularly for students who have more of a tactile learning style and have been struggling in traditional language acquisition.
I have a question maybe Brenda can answer. Does this only ASL or does it include Braille? Would they come out of the 3 years with the possibility of a seal of biliteracy? Perhaps if they were also hearing impaired and were working with Braille regularly, does this lead to a seal of biliteracy? No? Okay.
American Sign Language can lead to the seal of biliteracy, but it does not include Braille.
Okay. Got it.
So budget goal number 9 relates to the 7th grade summer school, and this is to support our district-wide objective of closing the achievement gap by adding the new 7th grade rising eighth graders to the program, the 2021 summer program will now include elementary and middle school grades K through 7, or rising first, rising eighth grade. And this is worth $245,000, which is similar to the budget asked when we added sixth grade last year. So the final slide we have is the 2021 per pupil spending by level. As you can see, it's just a recap, but now it's broken into district-wide services, high school, middle school, elementary school, as well as pre-K. You can see the $202 million, the recommended budget of $216 broken up into those same categories, as well as the $14 million. You can see where the increases are. The good news is for 2021, the Board of Ed recommended budget per pupil now puts our per pupil spending in the right order, where high school at 8,992 is the most expensive, or we're spending the right amount of money there. 8,826 for middle school and 8,821 for elementary in that order. It's a $115 per pupil increase for high school, $263 increase for middle school, and $365 increase for each elementary school student. Any questions?
Can you say a little bit of just about the backup that's also here?
So the next few slides, I'm not going to go into in detail unless someone has questions. It's the enrollment throughout the years. We're currently, the enrollment is 11,943, and we have different stages here. More detailed on enrollment, and then the health insurance as well.
Let me just add a
Sure.
couple, just two quick things on enrollment.
Yep.
One is, I think it's important to sort of understand and recognize the increases that we're looking at here. They're really quite extraordinary when you get right down to it. Going from 11,612 students currently to 11,943, that's 331 additional students, or almost 3%. That's essentially the equivalent almost of a whole new elementary school. If you're looking at it budget to budget, in terms of what the actual budget for the current year was based on, was 100 students less than that. So really, we're 400 students if we're looking budget to budget. So I think that's a really extraordinary figure to understand when you're evaluating this budget, understanding that there are a lot of additional students that are coming into the district that need to be accommodated. The other thing I just wanted to make, and I don't want to get into the weeds on enrollment, but one other point on the enrollment, and this is highlighted in the operating budget book, so that if the Finance Committee wants to get into the discussion, we can, but we look at enrollment really through three different lenses. One is through the PSIS lens, which is the official enrollment reports that go up to the state, and that's a very important lens to look at enrollment through. But that also includes, those figures include some students like out-of-district students and some pre-K students who receive just special services and so on. So we also look at enrollment, and the figures that are presented here are the, what I'll term, facility planning enrollment figures, which are kids in seats in district buildings. So this is actual kids in our buildings that we have to have a spot for and that we have to have a teacher for. And then the third enrollment figure that we, of course, work with is our SBB, or student-based budget enrollment figures, because some of the, the pre-K and so on are not included in the SBB allocations. So that we also have that third lens that we look at enrollment through, being the SBB budget. So that's really all I wanted to say on enrollment. And again, as Kristen said, we're obviously available for questions tonight. The Finance Committee is meeting on Thursday night in a joint meeting with the City Finance Committee. And then the budget at this point, we'll have to see what discussion the Finance Committee wants to have. But the budget is slated to be receive final approval from this board at your business meeting, which I guess is 2 weeks from tonight.
it's final approval of the amount of the ask as
Yes,
opposed to the
correct.
budget itself.
Yes.
Erica, you have a question?
I did. On the enrollment, in the backup documents, it had an out-of-district placement line item that's not in this slide.
Right,
question now?
that's correct, and that's one of this slide is what I was referring to as the kids in seats in district buildings slide. So out-of-district students are part of our enrollment that gets reported to the state. They are our students, but they are not a seat that's occupied in a Norwalk school. So that's why we have these different lenses that we look at enrollment through.
So at your January business meeting, I'll be giving you the January enrollment report.
Okay.
And you'll see a separate listing of the out-of-district students.
Okay. Can I ask you for clarification in the asterisks in the backup that you provided? It had that CES and ACES students are not included in the enrollment report.
Right.
You know how many that represents? Because it's relatively flat out of district placement, given that there may be some kids coming in.
We don't include, they're not reported in our 10-1 enrollment because they are other LEA grades.
So, those school programs, private school programs and district programs run by the regional education centers, which would be CREC, CES, and ACES, are reported to the state by those entities. And although they're included in other numbers in terms of our total out-of-district budget, they, for attendance purposes on the October 1 count, which is one of the lenses that Tom was referring to, are not included. So our total number for all the private schools, approved private schools, and the rests, which are those three programs, is projected at 74 students, which is 2 students higher than in previous years.
74 students, including the CES, and
Correct.
it is. So how many students are in CES and ACES, though? Otherwise, out of district is a relatively flat number, which
I think
assumes.
what's being reported on, I can't see from here.
14 are.
That is only because the rests are considered school districts, just like you. And so they, under law, they have to report their own enrollment for the schools that they run. Again, on your January enrollment report, you'll see this in totality. And as Yvette said, relative to the current out-of-district pace, I think we're up by 2 next year.
Okay.
So it's 14, same sort of question.
14, okay. I have a follow-up question. On the ELL special education line, it had $250,000 for next year. I know it wasn't a part of this year's appropriation, so it assumes about $125,000 is needed for this year to support those students that wasn't included in the appropriation. So how are we accounting for that in this year's budget?
The $250,000 is projected to serve the students next year, including evaluations. For this year, we're using our existing staff. Several of the students haven't been identified, they're just coming in, being served through curriculum and instruction and other intervention programs. We do have a number of bilingual staff members that are doing those evaluations and beginning to serve. The $250,000 is projected for next year.
So we were essentially able to absorb $125,000 in staffing needs against ELL this year.
No, I wouldn't say that.
budget?
I wouldn't say that at all. First of all, it takes a student several months in school, particularly a student who does not speak English, to identify their needs. And so I did not feel it would be appropriate to ask the city for a higher special appropriation this year, knowing that that money would simply sit there because we didn't know who the students were. This is a several-month process, and then you go through the evaluation process once a student is finally referred. Then you go through the testing and the IEP process and so on and so forth. By that time, you're pretty close to the end of the year, if not at the end of the year. So I think our planning for the special ed needs once they are known, is oriented toward the next school year. I don't believe we are absorbing much of anything right now, except perhaps the most obvious needs. But most of these needs are not obvious, especially with a student who is not speaking English.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody?
I just ask, I know we've seen the figure of the 66% high needs students in Norwalk. Is there data on how that breaks down between, for example, economically disadvantaged versus ELLs versus students with other learning needs?
Yes, there is. Again, on our January enrollment report, you'll actually see a sheet on each. So I think you're aware that in Connecticut, there are three categories that constitute the high-need population. One is low income, as measured by eligibility for free lunch. The other is special education, having an IEP. And the third is being an English language learner. So on our enrollment report, we started doing this last year at Mr. Barbas's request. We actually have a separate sheet now for each of the high need categories. We have a separate sheet now by race and ethnicity, as well as what we were doing in the past, which was simply reporting out by school and grade. So I'll review that with you in some detail in a couple of weeks.
On the backup, under substitutes, it fluctuates pretty significantly from 14,500 this year down to 3,000 next year. You know, what is driving that significant drop?
Well, this is our new substitute contract.
Okay.
Javier, do you want to comment on that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The substitute, what is the status of the substitute contract?
We have a meeting from tomorrow, next Wednesday, with the Personnel Negotiations Committee. They're going to review the proposal, they're going to meet with the vendor, and they're going to bring a recommendation at the business meeting.
And that contract, does it include the resources that Yvette spoke to about special needs subcontractors?
The special needs subcontractors?
No, these-
Having people available to fill in for special education staff who are in PPDs or are absent, so that we don't fall out of compliance.
That's correct, yes, that's part of the contract.
It's part of that negotiation. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Out of curiosity, Tom mentioned that there is about a $3 million variance between what was requested and what's recommended here. Could you just give us like a couple examples of what was not included from the request? Or what was cut from the request?
There were some new staff recommendations that were, there were a few additional new staff recommendations that were put in the budget that were cut out, as well as some departmental supplies and other increases that we shaved down. If I can give you more detail and send that to you if you would like.
I think that's
Okay.
that's fine.
So the only, district office new position is that clinical position for supervision of counselors. The other recommendations from the counseling study go into the schools. Those were the people that staffed the career centers in both schools, so that the counselors could counsel and not have to spend a period each in the career centers. But we have every year we have requests for new positions. We try not to. Very proud of the fact that we have a very lean central office. I'll give you, since we've been comparing Stanford tonight in various ways, I'll give you just a sense of that. The state, when they provide the total spending comparisons, they also give you a breakdown by function. So, for example, in general administration, which is the district administration as opposed to school, Stanford spends $417 per student. We spend $249 per student, about 40% less. Also, the board asked in this capacity review that is one of our goals for this year. The Center for School Change will be coming in and looking at this. It's going to be benchmarking where we are now, so it'll be helpful to the new board and superintendent relative to the next strategic operating plan. But they're also going to look at, does the district office have the capacity, to carry out all this out? Based upon the noticeable difference in our staffing versus some other cities.
Thank you. If I could just ask a question along the lines of the Director of School Counseling. I know we'll have one, right? And then 2 paraprofessionals, correct? I love the idea, I know we spoke about this prior, but having the mock interviews, which is so critical, especially for our students that are, other than career ready, but also college ready as well, and internships and mentorships. Will we be evaluating this after a year to figure out what's been working, what hasn't been working, what we may need to tweak or not, since this is really brand new and it's part of our redesign? I think it's fabulous. I know that we've had a lot of discussions on it. I know Julie Corbett was also involved as part of this, but I'm just curious to know in a year's time, are we going to reevaluate and see what we're looking at?
Yes, we did a lot of survey data directly with the school counselors as well as students and families.
Yeah.
So we have good benchmark data, and we'll use that to judge the success of the program at the end of next year.
Great. I think it would be fabulous if after a year's time, when you have that feedback and that data, if it can be presented back in a PowerPoint or any type of presentation to see, because to me, this is cutting edge. And I think that we've needed this for a really long time in our counseling center. And we have fantastic staff, great teachers, great counselors, but I think this has really been needed. And I'd be curious to see a year from now what would take place.
I will piggyback on you and say that as I've been speaking about the budget goals to members of the community, they are very excited about those college and career counselor staffing because it's been much needed.
Especially for our students, I've spoken about this, but our juniors that are really looking at colleges, and even our seniors, but most importantly our juniors that are really kind of stepping into new ground and kind of unsure, and other than having visits from colleges coming into our high schools, but really having that mentorship. And we spoke about guidance counselors that are really working with our students freshman year, some even in middle school, but specifically freshmen all the way up, and having that continuity of a counselor from beginning 9th grade all the way through 12th grade. So I think this is really a very needed program that we're implementing.
I have a question on the technology line. I see it went up. Does it represent, I mean, this is for Ralph, or is it? Ralph, are you out there? You did, okay.
I'm not sure which line are you talking about?
733, that line?
733?
95. Yes. Dr. Arkin, maybe you know this from Ralph. Do you know if that bump represents the conversation that we had about equitable access in home of laptop devices? Were we able to explore that?
I'm not sure. I'm going to need Ralph to confirm that. We did have that conversation, though.
He's just right in A300, he'll be right back.
Okay.
And that may also relate to the capital budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, great, thank you.
yeah, we do have detailed itemization on all these that we can certainly share with the Finance Committee. I think it's certainly helpful if you do have specific questions that you want us to make sure we can address at the Finance Committee meeting, is to try to get that information to us, shoot us an email or whatever so that we can know what information to pull out. Essentially, the 733 is a software line item. So you see a description of a number of the items in there, the Follett Library Automation System, PowerSchool, Edgenuity, Project Lead the Way licensing, Naviance guidance software, Google applications, and other software. There's a whole list of systems and software that the district uses throughout the district, in the schools, and as well as administrative systems here in central office that are really critical to the functioning of the district. And so the increase there is, is related to those ongoing costs of those systems. Now, Ralph may know off the top of his head exactly what the increase is, but we would need to.
Tom,
Kristen and I would need to find
the
it.
Chromebooks, though, would be in the capital budget, correct?
Yes, hardware purchases typically are in the capital budget.
So I was debating if it would be in the operating budget, because it's probably an insurance line item, because they exist already, right? So it's just whether or not we can send them home and
think they're-
insure them.
They're warranted, and
Okay.
then the families purchase a $25 insurance that they pay through my school bucks.
Right, okay,
And so I don't think we would reinsure them annually. I
okay.
think that's included.
I think that's correct.
So Kristen did
Good
find
answer.
the backup on that,
Sorry.
so
No,
If I
good
jumped-
answer. That was a good answer.
Kristen can tell you what the what the increase was here.
So some of the items that make up the increase are smartboard software, learning.com, Nearpod, and Google applications for education. And there's a
those are the new
complete
items.
detailed list under this line item. But those are the ones that are essentially driving the increase.
I think the Google applications may have been new based upon your discussion.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Shall we
Now, do you want to continue with questions or discussion, or would you like Tom to go on to the capital budget request?
I have a question for Tom. I think maybe the finance committee and members of the board should send questions by email, because I think the joint meeting maybe isn't the time for us to barrage him with questions about our budget.
That's correct.
A good point.
Okay? So go ahead and send anything you want to me. I'll send it to Tom. We'll get an answer to the full board.
I think I'm done, so.
Okay, so then with that, we'll move on.
Okay, capital budget. This will
Okay.
be relatively short.
And
Thanks, Kristen.
let's see. Oops. Okay. Capital budget, you should have received copies of the capital budget. I'm just going to walk through a high-level summary of what's in there. This is consistent with what was shared with the Finance Committee and the Facilities Committee in December. We're still gathering some additional information that was requested at that last meeting, and I can update some of that today, and some of it we can update at the next committee meeting. But to walk through, again, the capital budget requests for next year total $57.254 million. The largest item on here is a new Cranberry School at $45 million. And that's followed by cafeteria and kitchen renovations, including an addition, a kitchen addition at Narragansett, and other kitchen renovation work and kitchen equipment replacement that totals $5,040,000. Fuel tank replacement, which is needed based on state of Connecticut environmental regulations, at $1,250,000. Silver Mine driveway improvements, which are needed to address a significant backlog that occurs every day at Silver Mine, and this would help alleviate that problem. Air conditioning, continuing air conditioning program, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Asbestos abatement, Ponus Ridge furniture to provide additional furniture for the upper school at Ponus Ridge to the tune of $1 million. Curriculum material and textbooks for literacy materials and science textbooks, $609,000. Indoor air quality, which has been an area that we have continued to work with OSHA in the voluntary compliance program. You may be aware that some of our nearby districts have experienced very significant problems that have caused many tens of millions of dollars of repairs. So we think $200,000 is good insurance to continue to address any issues that do arise here in Norwalk. School security enhancements, $200,000. Emergency repairs and replacement, $250,000. Instructional technology, I believe we sent out Ralph's itemized list of that $700,000. And finally, piano replacement, which I do actually have some updated information on, which is in the budget right now at $150,000. So Cranberry Elementary School, it's the largest project. The district, in concert with the city building management department, has retained an architect who has completed a conceptual design and prepared a detailed cost estimate. And that project now incorporates an entirely new academic building, a new separate cafetorium. Right now, the cafeteria is shared it's basically a gym, cafeteria, and auditorium right now, and that would be a separate cafeteria and auditorium would be developed, a new library media center, and a renovated gymnasium. So essentially, the only piece of the building that would remain is the gymnasium would remain and be renovated. The rest of the building would be all new, obviously fully air-conditioned, fully sprinklered, up to code, separate parent and bus drop-offs, and outdoor recreation spaces, and phased construction so that the current building can remain occupied. We don't have to find an alternate location for the students while that building is being rebuilt or a new building is being constructed on the site. So the cafeteria and kitchen improvements, again, this is one where the city and the district retained the services of an architect and have developed schematic designs, and a detailed cost estimate has been developed. The current kitchen is the smallest kitchen in the district. It's very undersized, it's inadequate. The current setup for how students queue up for going through the line is very inefficient and time-consuming. It takes students too long to get to the lunch line, and it doesn't provide the sort of less institutional feel that we're looking for in our dining experience and eating experience for students. So this will really transform that for this school, create new kitchen, and repurpose existing space for a new cafeteria, and will result in equity in the sense that our objective is to have all of our elementary schools with a separate cafeteria from gymnasium. So this will really check several boxes, if you will, in terms of addressing strategic operating plan objectives, in terms of improving meal quality, improving the student dining experience, and making necessary upgrades to that facility. Also included in this appropriation is funding to continue our cafeteria renovation program, this time at Nathan Hale, which is part of our healthy food and improved dining environment strategic operating plan objective, as well as includes funding for new kitchen equipment district-wide. I do have a detailed list. I think that list went out with the package that went to the board of what will be included there. So
just to add to that, because I don't think the board has discussed this item separately in particular, but as you know, we have a new food service company. They are being required by us to do more scratch cooking as opposed to assembling frozen food, right? Which is what our approach was in the past through the central kitchen. We really have to replace kitchen equipment in order to do that. Our kitchen equipment is in most cases as old as the pianos, which is about a range of 20 to 40 years. To the extent the poster child for this was the school that had a stove in which the burners didn't work, and they would boil water by putting the water in the oven and turning the oven up. And so this goes way, way back. And again, you say, well, why don't we do something about this earlier? Well, we had other priorities. And, but it's a very difficult situation in most schools. And this, again, this will really help in terms of just the basics in terms of scratch cooking and nutrition and good food for our students.
If I could just add on, I think the dining experience, we were just discussing this during our policy committee meeting, but it really is a time for students to talk, have conversations. That's really conversation time for our students, and it's really critically important that they have a great dining experience and have a round table where they have that open dialogue, and they're able to carefully and quickly go through the cafeteria, to go through the line and able to eat their lunch in a certain amount of time. So I think having this and allocating this in our budget is really, really important. I'm glad that we're getting this done, and I realize a lot of our kitchens are so dated.
Yeah,
They really are.
The food service manager, Kevin McGinn, has really identified that issue of throughput, getting students through the system
right.
more quickly as one of the key impediments, because it impacts our meal sales. When he talks to students and asks them, well, how come you're not getting lunch today? And it's because it takes so long to get through the meal line that they don't want to miss out on recess, or they don't want to miss out on being with their friends, and so it's easier to bring your lunch and not have to wait through the line. So he's identified a number of means, a number of mechanisms to increase that throughput, if you will, so students can get through the line more quickly by having additional options of how you can get through there. And so that really is a key element for both the financial performance of food service as well as improving the experience for students, so they're not standing in this cattle line, they're in the lunchroom having lunch with their friends. So
this might be more appropriate to talk about at facilities, but I think it's important that we make some effort to help people understand who's in which order as we do the renovations of the kitchens, because I know we all think about all of the schools together, but each of the school communities thinks about their own school community, and I think we have to make sure that we let them know there's an equitable process and a reason why people are in the order that they're in.
Yep. Okay, we can certainly do that. I think you had a question over here.
Tom, I just wanted to ask about Merrimack. Are they going to have to do an addition since that kitchen is so small, or how are they going to accommodate that?
Merrimack would be an addition of a kitchen and repurposing existing space for the cafeteria. So, but yes, there would need to be an addition for the kitchen.
Okay.
So other capital projects, I don't want to spend too long on these. I've already talked about the fuel tanks, and also included under fuel tank replacement, it includes a new propane tank installation related to the Green Bus Initiative. That is included in that request. The Silvermine driveway issue we talked about. Air conditioning program, the plan for next year includes finishing up the last few pieces at Kendall. Kendall was done last year, but there's a couple of sections of the building to finish up to make that project complete and fully air conditioned. Roten Middle School also was, we did about half of Roten Middle School last year with the all of the rooms that have exterior windows. Air conditioners were put in, but we didn't have enough funding to do the interior rooms, and so the request for next year includes funding to do the interior rooms at Roten, which will finish up Roten, and then while we're doing other work at Silvermine, we're proposing to also do Silvermine next year. Where that leaves us, this was one of the questions, was who's fully air conditioned and so on. We have a number of buildings that have full central air. And anytime we're doing a new school or a renovation as new, that project will include full central air. So Brian McMahon High School, Norwalk High School, Ponus Ridge School, as of August of 2020, will be fully air conditioned. And then at the elementary level, we have Brookside, Jefferson, Marvin, and Norwalk Early Childhood Center are central air. And then what I guess would be terming ultimately as an interim solution, but a solution that will meet the needs of the school probably for a 10 to 15-year period is the intention. And basically, until we can get to the point where we're doing a renovation as new on all of our schools, we have proposed a solution that will install portable type units, window units, sometimes these ductless type units that you'll see at hotels and other places like that. So we've air conditioned with these portable units, Columbus, Cranberry, Fox Run, Kendall, and again, I already mentioned Rhoton, half a Rhoton last year. So what that leaves, again, for next year is finishing up Rhoton and the couple rooms left at Kendall, Silvermine, and then the year after that, West Rocks and Wolf Pit. The year after that, 22, 23, Nathan Hale and Narragansett, and then finally 23, 24, Tracy and Rowayton, and then that will complete the installation until we, are going back to do renovate as new on any of those schools. Any schools that get renovated as new would then get moved to a full central air system.
Tom, can I just interject for 1 minute? As far as these portable air conditioners, are they going to be put in each room, or is it depending?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll be every single room?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's just classrooms, right? It's not gyms, it's not
Yeah, just,
hallways.
yeah, that's what I'm talking
Not
about.
hallways, right.
Just classrooms.
It does include, any classroom space,
Right.
and we're looking at the gymnasium at some kind of unit in the gymnasium at Kendall.
So not in cafeterias, it'll be in classrooms?
Well, some of the cafeterias are already done, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Does the Silvermine and Rhoton project, will that be completed before school starts?
That would be the intention. My last slide here is a pitch, and I'm certainly glad that Mayor Rilling is here. My last slide that I'll get to in a minute is a pitch that the city consider taking some of these projects, pulling them out and handling them as a special capital appropriation. And the reason for that is those projects that we want to get done over the summer, it is very difficult for us to do that when the capital budget is not approved until late April, and then it doesn't actually go into effect until July 1st. It makes it, there's really no time it's very difficult to get the work done. Now, we've managed somehow to do it, but last year we did run into some difficulty and we didn't complete the kitchen projects at either West Rocks or at Tracy, probably till about a month into the school year. And the reason for that is, especially with those kitchen projects, there's a long lead time for kitchen equipment. And they're just literally, we put the order in as soon as we could possibly put the order in, but the equipment didn't arrive until October 1st. Well, there's not much you can do at that point. So my pitch to the city is to help us for the projects where we expect to be doing the work this summer. It would be enormously helpful if we could consider doing those as a special capital appropriation.
Tom, didn't you also say that we stood to save money from that also because of when it falls in the bidding process, that we're not doing a rushed bidding window and therefore
Right.
we get more bids and
Yeah,
more competitive?
absolutely. That is one of the other problems, is that when we go out to bid in June, many of the contractors have already lined up all their summer work, and so we've got fewer bidders that are available to bid on our projects.
So we pay more.
Tom? You mentioned West Rocks, but I thought we had done that when we redid the windows, that they had put them in.
We did a lot of West Rocks, but I talked to Bill Hodell on that question today, because I had the same impression, and he told me that we did not do every single room at West Rocks. We did a lot of the rooms, all the rooms that had 504s, which is one of the other things that, the district, if we have a 504 that says we need to have air conditioning in the room, then we have to put air conditioning in the room then. And so Bill indicated to me that we've done that at West Rocks and gone a bit beyond that, but there were still other rooms to be completed there.
I can attest, I actually had a teacher walk me through the building with a thermometer, and it's extraordinary, especially in the hallways. It's like 85 or 90 degrees on that second floor, so it's pretty intense, and we do need to complete it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been trying to follow, so forgive me. Are there any schools that do not have air conditioning at this point? Not even a temporary?
Yes,
The ones he
right, yes.
I know,
Well, we
but
have, I mean, all the schools probably have some 504 air conditioners. I would imagine there's probably some 504
Right.
air conditioners in every school. But the ones that I referred to,
And I'm sorry.
Silvermine, Wolf Pit, Nathan Hale, Narragansett, Tracy, and Rowayton, are still yet to be done.
So when it gets too hot, and again with the, on advice of the health department, because we anticipate on a hot day, when the sun is beating on the school, that the upstairs is generally 10 to 15 degrees higher than the, okay, so we've been faced several times with having to close schools. So we're in a situation now where we keep the air-conditioned schools open, and we close the schools that are not air-conditioned. So when I became superintendent 5 years ago, of our 20 schools, there were 10 that had air conditioning and 10 that had to close. We now have 21 schools, and I think we're down to, is it 6 or 7 that do not have air conditioning and would have to close?
1, 2, yes, 7.
Yeah, so this is, as that number dwindles, this is going to be more of a public issue, because if you're in one of the schools that has to close, this is not good, right? But again, we have a plan, we've been following the plan, and we're getting there.
But just as a follow-up to that, so some of these schools have to wait 2 years just even for a temporary portable fix? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Correct.
Wow.
I would also mention there's some thought behind the prioritization, because Silvermine has these internal classrooms that have no windows, and so they really, really need it.
That's correct.
Okay, so just to quickly finish up, other capital projects, we talked about the Ponus furniture. The upper school furniture replacement was not included in the original capital project for Ponus. That is not a full renovation as new there. As you know, obviously, we've just opened the lower school building, and students from the upper 6 to 8 grades have moved into that as swing space, while work is undertaken at the original 6 to 8 Ponus building, and we have proposed putting money in the capital budget to replace the remaining furniture in the 6 to 8 wing. Right now, we have a situation where the teachers have moved into the new building, and there's, they're sort of getting a taste of the new building. They're going to move back to presently to the old building with old furniture, and as we talked about at the committee level, furniture really has changed a lot in the school space. Furniture is now moved around a lot in the classroom for purposes of changing learning styles. You may have a group 6 or 8 students together for one particular project, and then move them back apart into separate desks or into smaller groups, and so you need furniture that is flexible and allows you to do that, and the current furniture is not conducive to that.
We have to be mindful of our time.
Yep. Okay. Are we now going forward with these new projects, considering the furniture as we do the original capital request instead of doing a secondary one?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
it's our first new school in 4 years. So.
right, I think the issue is the new building had new furniture attached to it. The issue is I think, and we've talked about this, that many of our buildings really, really desperately need renovation as new. And when you do renovation as new, that includes replacing all the furniture. And so if we can get to a stage where we're really renovating, schools as new, then that would be, one way to address the furniture issue. Alternatively, what we've proposed here is replacing, a lot of our furniture is really old throughout the district, and so it's an issue not just at Ponus, it's an issue throughout the district. So if you look at the 5-year plan, you'll see we put in requests in the out years to address the furniture issue at other schools.
So when the Jefferson is renovated as new, furniture is included in that?
Yes, Jefferson, Cranberry.
What about the IB Global?
The IB Global and the new Columbus would all include new furniture as part of those
So
projects.
this is an anomaly, okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think I've talked about the rest of these items, except I do want to touch on piano replacement, because I know there were some questions on that, and I just got some updated information from curriculum today, and they've indicated, and I can share this with you, but they've indicated to me that in order to implement the music program that we want to implement, we need 59 pianos. We currently have 44 pianos, of which 39 or 35 need to be thrown out, essentially. So we've got 9 pianos that we can repurpose and continue to use, but most of our pianos are beyond the end of their useful life. So what curriculum has proposed is replacing 16 pianos next year, 17 the year after, and then 17 the year after that. There's also a baby grand piano at Brian McMahon that needs quite a bit of refurbishment, but is a good piano and is worth refurbishing. So you add these numbers together, and we have a revised budget request now of $127,000 for next year, followed by $119,000 and $119,000. So that's the revised budget request number. So it comes down slightly from the $150,000 that was in the original request.
So you're asking for less money?
Yes.
Yes.
Just for pianos.
You can say thank you to Sarah, who said, that's good money.
So that's information we can, share with the Facilities and Finance Committee, and assuming you accept it, then you can make that change when you make your final recommendation or request to the city.
Gotcha.
And then the last thing I already talked about, which is this issue of the appropriation timing. And so the projects that I've put in the first column, 1920 special appropriation request, are the projects that we would intend to undertake this summer, and therefore would request that the city consider special appropriation. So out of the 57 million, about 10.7 of it is requested for this year. So it includes the cafeteria and kitchen renovation projects. That's probably the most significant one, and the ones where we know we have long lead times. Fuel tank replacement needs to happen this summer, and having, that's a project that could bleed into the fall, but it's better to get the construction done before the kids are back at school, and you've got interference with construction sites and so on at a school location. Obviously, the tanks would need to be in the ground and operational for the start of the heating season, so it's not something that can't happen in the upcoming construction season. The air conditioning is another one where there's just a lot of planning and work that goes into getting those projects undertaken. Asbestos abatement has to generally much better to occur when the building's not occupied. The furniture replacement, we want the furniture ideally before the start of school. And the curriculum material and textbooks, again, we want those materials in at the start of school, not a month or two later into the school year. So that's the capital request. I don't know if there's any other questions. Obviously, there's been a few.
Just really quickly, the Rowayton Elementary School update to serving line, so they just had a renovation, so this is a $75,000 line item?
Yes, that is in the kitchen. The renovation at Rowayton was really limited to the cafeteria. The kitchen was not updated at Rowayton. So that was the first cafeteria renovation we did, and it came out wonderful. We don't need to do anything in the cafeteria, but we do need to go back and make some improvements in the kitchen.
Just quickly, I know we have a time limit. As far as Columbus, since we can't build on the Ely site, have there been any considerations as far as if we may have to purchase or what we're going to do since we can't build on the Ely site?
You know, there's a long, complicated answer to this. I don't know if the mayor wants to give it tonight, but this is something we are planning to discuss with the Facilities Committee at their next meeting.
I can work with
Yep.
Great.
Any other questions?
Ready?
Thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So now,
So I think you want to keep in mind now, for your January business meeting, are there any adjustments that you wish to make? Additions, deletions, adjustments relative to the, priorities and proposal that we've made tonight? And again, at that time, you're only approving the dollar amount of your request as opposed to the budget itself. You will have other opportunities to look at, the central services as the schools are developing their budgets. And then again, if the city cannot afford to fund the amount that you submit, we will have to go through a reconciliation process. And the choice there is, do you not do some of the budget goals? Or, as we did in 1 year prior, you say the budget goals are more important than some of our legacy expenditures, and we go into legacy expenditures and make reductions there. Hopefully, we will not be faced with that, but we will need to be prepared for that. Okay.
Will you, as in past years, give us during a meeting in February the list of what we might cut if we were not fully funded?
Yes, and what I would be doing, given the comparative data that we now have with other districts, those would be in areas where we are spending more than other districts are spending. Sorry.
I know.
Sure. Okay, so let's move to agenda item 4, which is the approval of drawings, specifications, and the cost estimate for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment for Ponus Lower School project.
So moved.
Do we have any discussion?
I do,
Jim.
actually, yeah. Do you want a second
No.
before we go into discussion?
Oh, I second.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sure.
Just really briefly, I feel uncomfortable as a board member approving something that I haven't seen, that the community is expecting me to have vetted. So I'm wondering if we could loop in the SGC in the process. So before it ever comes to the board facilities committee, that the SGC has seen the plan and has said, yes, this is what we're excited about. And then I would feel more comfortable voting without taking a lot of everybody's time to review.
Okay. This is just the furniture, yes?
Correct.
Okay. Can you talk to us a little bit about who has vetted this furniture so far besides us?
So the furniture it was designed by the architect of record. We worked with Brenda Meyer and Tina Henkel, as well as Nick Brophy, to come up with the required furniture for the new spaces, primarily the lower school. There is some middle school furniture in here in the areas that we're heavily renovating, or some areas where we have programmatic changes. That will get new furniture as well, which does have some middle school grades affected by it. Really, the second floor is probably the area that right now does not have new furniture. But we have to go through a process with the design team dictated by the requirements of the Office of School Construction Grants and Review. We come up with furniture layout as recommended by the design team and reviewed by the administration. The design and how the furniture fits within each specific room is reviewed by Office of School Construction Grants and Review to make sure that we meet ADA requirements and have the clearances that we need between the furniture and walls and other apparatus in the room.
There might be greater opportunity for parent involvement in furniture for the existing PONUS.
Correct.
Because again, that's not subject to state construction
Right.
board review and all the other requirements that we have to meet in this process.
So let me share with you why I mentioned this. Last year, there was a design that came to the Facilities Committee for the Norwalk High School Learning Commons. And I reached out to the building committee at NHS and I said, have you seen this? And they said, no, we haven't. And they did not like it. And the question is, are we consulting with the end users and giving them an ownership moment in the same way that we did with the SGC and PTO at Rowayton when they chose a nautical theme for their cafeteria, which delighted their entire community? Every school community has its own flavor and its own functionality on the ground. And I totally agree that we have to go through all of these procedures and vetting and working with the staff. But I think there's a last layer there before it comes to the board where we're enrolling that SGC community that we say we have empowered.
So a couple things on that. We have had instances, and Fox Run would be another one with the library,
That's a great project.
where PTO has raised half the funds. And obviously, when they do that, they have a much larger say in the theme and how, and the decor and so on and so forth, because they're paying for it. In the case of Norwalk High School, that's probably a good example of where that should have occurred and didn't. However, with the new Norwalk High School, that will not be occurring. Similar to this, because you're going to have this as part of the design, and a certain furniture is going to go in certain spaces based upon the need and the decor and design of the school and so on and so forth. So I think, again, I think there's a greater opportunity to involve folks in furniture replacement than there is in a building project that includes FF&E, because the state is not going to approve anything that is not consistent here.
Just playing devil's advocate, if you're only giving choice to schools that can afford to use PTO money to invest in things, then you're not being equitable.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
So let's take PONUS as an example. You have a capital item for furniture at PONUS. That's replacement furniture, right? Which is appropriate given, the nice new wing that is adjacent to the existing building. And so in that case, I think it'd be entirely appropriate to consult with the SGC before, final decisions are made on what to order.
Right, thank you.
We had a similar situation at Tracy when we replaced some furniture a couple of years ago. And those are absolutely things we should have done and certainly can be argued that should have happened at Norwalk High School.
Thank you.
What I would say is, what it sounds like I'm hearing is that there's a narrower window for choice here anyway. And so to add another step would delay the furniture too much, and also people wouldn't even have that much choice to begin with. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, originally, we tried to get here in November. Then we were scheduled for December. We got delayed due to the cancellation of the meeting, and we're here today because we do need to get, and I already have a meeting set up with the state for their review.
Sure.
I had asked Jim if he could wait till the business meeting this month. He could not, based upon when the state review was scheduled.
So it seems like it would make sense to give people the opportunity for choice where there actually would be a nice choice, rather than where it would make it be that they wouldn't get any chairs because we waited too long. Go ahead, Heidi.
I just want to add a quick comment. Barbara brings out actually a good point. I think every school on a larger scale has their own individuality, their own culture, their own vibe. So I think moving forward on a larger scale item, definitely input. I think it's important for each school community.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
This was reviewed by the Facilities Committee. Erica, do you have any comments?
No, we got to look through the plans, and I appreciate you catching me up because I didn't have any background on the project. So they took a lot of time to walk us page by page through the drawings and answer some of our questions.
That's great.
Great.
Beautiful.
Okay, so then all in favor of the approval of the drawings at all? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All against? Any abstentions? 1, 2, 2 abstentions, okay.
Okay, along with the approval, I do need a signature of the chair.
Is this in my folder? Or is it right here?
Okay, we'll get that right back to you.
Today's the 6th.
Seventh, right? Yeah. I do that all the time, too.
Thank you. There you go.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so now we are going to move on to item 5, which is public comment. I don't know if there's a list around. And because this is a workshop meeting, public comment has to be related to a workshop topic.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our public comment section. I only have one person up. I have Diane Loricella. You have, Diane, approximately 3 minutes. State your full name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good evening and happy holidays, New Year.
Happy holidays.
I just saw you at the council meeting last month. So welcome aboard. Mayor, how are you? And Dr. Adamowski. My name for the record is Diane Loricella. I will be contacting the appropriate chair people of the committees, but I do appreciate all the hard work that I've seen. I want to limit my few minutes to the following on the budget goals. One thing that I wanted to do is, again, take a look at this through a green lens. Our citywide plan of conservation and development, the previous one, talks about some things that I don't think we've achieved yet in our Board of Ed goals and budgets. I think what we would like to do, as far as on the operating budget, I'd like to see a goal number 10. That goal would be lowering and reducing our carbon footprint in our city. I think that's a good goal. It's important to curriculum as well as the future of comfort in schools, the heat that you were talking about, that you need air conditioning. This all has to do with climate change. For those of you that don't believe it, you're in the minority at this point. So there's a new program called Zero Waste Schools, Zero Energy Schools, and I would like to speak with Mr. Giuliano and Ed Hodel. I'm here because I've attempted to discuss some of these things over the years, and I'm not going away. As a responsible taxpayer and person who's an advocate for these items, I really do look forward to the new people on the board and the new chair people on the board. And I'm looking forward to those of you that have been here so that we may meet again, because it wouldn't be the first time we talked about this. I know the clock is running, so here's what I would suggest, and I will be forwarding things to our Finance Committee as well as the Facilities Committee in the very near future. It's still not too late to amend the budget. Some of you that have been told this, it is not the case. You have the Board of Estimate and the Council and the Planning Commission that could amend things and remove things and add things. So here's the thing. In looking at your operating budget especially, I want to suggest in this budget, not next time, that the fiscal year 2021, that you have a goal to reduce percentages of the following. In 410, 622, 624, and 625. Water and sewer, electricity, oil, and natural gas. I'm very pleased that I've been told that there has been energy audits of all of the buildings. That's terrific. That's a great thing, but it doesn't get us to the point where we're actually saving money and creating a better. Is that two minutes?
That's, 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yeah, yes. Sorry.
If I could have 30 more seconds, I actually do think when there's only one person speaking, 3 minutes is, I'd like you to, all of you, and I will write to you that you should reconsider 5 minutes like other cities and towns. But anyway, I'll wrap up right now. In the issue of waste management, that's something that I've been told of previously is we would save too little money to make it important enough. You have to look at the 5 R's: refuse, reduce, reuse, rot, which is composting of food and leaves, and then recycling. And we're not even doing the basics consistently between the 20 or so buildings in the school. And unless and until that is included in your operating and, in this case, and also capital budget, I don't think you should move forward with this budget. This needs to be handled. I've tried to talk about it for many years, and I have proof of it. Also, your fuel tanks. In the past, as a former hazardous waste enforcement person and regulated waste enforcement person at the DEP, all of the fuel tanks should be brought out of the ground if possible. But the fact that we have some that are at end of life are ticking time bombs, and that will mean we could spend millions more dollars on cleanups. So again, on priorities, I'm very pleased that Mr. Hamilton did mention that. But there are other things such as artificial turf, where you're spending over $1 million per turf, and actually there's a lot of health issues that another time we will talk about because they are real. And I've been ignored about this, and I have brought it up. Lastly, and I'll wrap up again, you have to decide as far as energy in producing ways to optimize solar, so that when you have new or additions to your buildings, you have to consider orienting the building so that you can take advantage of passive solar, which has been proven to give not only increased points in children's scores, but it also saves money on air conditioning and heating because you are optimizing this. You have to make sure that you are, I know that you are thinking about right now carports, but also the current philosophy about when to put solar panels on roofs is misconstrued. Other districts like Newtown, Danbury, they have the same age buildings as we do, yet they have more. They made deals with the solar companies, and they are producing their energy, their electricity, and therefore saving tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why reinvent the wheel if the people that are giving you the advice keep saying that this is not so? Find some other people for second opinions, because you are not being told the correct information about the roofs, including the use of green roofs, which would keep the building cooler. I'm a professional in this business now. 1 or 2 of you in this group may not think I'm a professional because you don't reach out to me and ask me to get you contacts. I'm insulted by that, but I'm still coming back here because a lot of you do respect me, and a lot of you want to improve how we do things on facilities in this community. So green roofs are not trees. They are lightweight vegetation that can be moved around, and they will keep your buildings cooler so that you don't need as much air conditioning. So please, let's talk. I'm glad, Sarah, that you're at the helm, and I look forward to the future, and good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. That ends our public comment section for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Heidi.
Colin, can I have a second? Heidi, all in favor? We are adjourned.
Thank you.